And for more on the impact of Israel's airstrike on Beirut, let's go to Saeed Khan. He's an associate professor of Near East and Asian Studies at Wayne State University. Saeed, thanks so much for being on with us. People are already feeling the heightened sense of tension when it comes to the latest escalations in the region. How much does the latest strike taking out top Hezbollah leaders ratchet up tensions? And what is the Lebanese government saying about all of this happening, this attack in the capital in Beirut? What can it do?
Well, as far as the latter question, there's really not much that the Lebanese government can do. We've seen now for several decades, it might be noted, that Israeli strikes within Lebanon breaching its sovereignty occur without much rebuke, without much rejoinder, and without any real consequences when it comes to Israel vis-a-vis international law. The Lebanese, unfortunately, have become acclimated to a certain rhythm and pace that we see occurring. 2006 was a classic example of this with the Lebanese war, one that Israel actually was not successful in carrying out its missions and really led to the downfall of its prime minister at the time. Right now, though, this is not just about Israel and Lebanon, or even more specifically Hezbollah. The fact that there are American warships that are deployed, the fact that the United States is demonstrating its solidarity with Israel, irrespective of the kinds of actions and the missions that the Israeli Defense Forces are taking out, is making this far more dangerous than just seemingly a conflict between two neighboring countries in the region.
Yeah, and then how much sway or leverage does the U.S. actually hold at this point? Because according to the UN ambassador for Israel, Netanyahu may shorten his trip to the UN or delay it and has no plans to meet Biden. It's not the best signal to send, is it?
Well, let's face it. I mean, President Biden is the outgoing president of the United States. And so somehow the other, in January, the United States will have a new president. It would be far more likely for Prime Minister Netanyahu to want to meet either with candidate Donald Trump or current Vice President Kamala Harris to then assess what is going to be the American posture moving forward. But when it comes to American leverage, that begs the question about whether the United States actually does want to exert any kind of leverage on its ally Israel. We've seen some kinds of tepid statements that have come from particularly Vice President Harris, saying that we are seeking a de-escalation in tensions. We are trying to move toward a ceasefire. But more and more increasingly, these appear to be simply empty campaign slogans as far as how the general public is viewing it. And on that subject, I mean, the American public is rather distracted, if you will, or having its attention focused on the remaining 45 days leading up to the general election here. For many, the issues of the Middle East do not take center stage in what is in their attention span.
Yeah. Israel itself says those killed were the architects of a plan to raid communities in northern Israel, and that it's not trying to inflame the situation further. Yet they keep backing away from coming to the table on a ceasefire. So what are some of the key sticking points that remain for them?
Well, looking at Israeli media and certainly looking at the protests that seem to be never ending in the streets of Tel Aviv every night, Israeli public opinion against Prime Minister Netanyahu is quite negative. And there is a growing sentiment in Israel and elsewhere that the escalation and the intensification and the broadening of this conflict is really more of a cynical political ploy by Prime Minister Netanyahu. Israeli military officials, Israeli intelligence officials all seem to indicate that when it comes to ceasefire regarding Gaza, when it comes to the need for the kind of escalation that is occurring in the region, all of these seem to be issues that could be tempered if Netanyahu was more amenable to having actual negotiations. But these are continuing now unabated. And perhaps, unfortunately, as long as Netanyahu feels as though he's got political viability, particularly with American support, I'm afraid that this may continue and even escalate further.
And then how does that impact the release of hostages that have been held for almost 1 year now?
Well, as you rightly put, I mean, we are coming up on the 1-year anniversary of October 7th. There have been overtures made by Hamas to have a release of hostages. But again, according to even Israeli officials, it seems as though Prime Minister Netanyahu is the one who is backing off the deals. So it seems as though Israeli hostages as well as Palestinian detainees are going to be spending their one-year anniversary in continued detention.
You know, a big piece of the UN agenda this week at the General Assembly will be devoted to discussing issues of global governance and how much power do they have to influence things. Do you think there needs to be more pressure from sovereign nations to try to achieve some kind of a peaceful solution?
We've seen that in the General Assembly, where there was a near unanimous vote in favor of ending the occupation of Palestine. But as, of course, you know, the United Nations Security Council is designed in such a way that if there were any kind of actual enforcement mechanisms or pressure that would be placed, that would almost certainly receive a veto from at least one of the permanent members of the Security Council, i.e. the United States, if not France and Great Britain. So unfortunately, the structures of the United Nations as it currently is seem to preclude the very reason for its existence, which is to use diplomacy and to reduce tensions among nations and amongst various conflicting parties.
Saeed, how much has Iran become emboldened by the escalation of these tensions? And do you think that further escalation is possible? Because there is this sense of worry that that is, you know, almost inevitable.
Well, I'm not sure from the standpoint of emboldenment regarding Iran. Iran certainly has a target on its back when it comes to Israeli action or possible reprisals. And again, the demonization of Iran by the United States, by the UK, and other actors in the West don't exactly give Iran a whole lot of breathing room. But at the same time, I think it's very interesting to see that Iran is a rather cool customer and is not allowing itself to get drawn into a further conflict in the region. Certainly, its clients in the region, like Hezbollah and Hamas, are bearing the brunt, including also the Houthis in Yemen. They, after all, were able to launch a missile strike that hit Tel Aviv. It was able to evade the Iron Dome protection system. But as far as a kind of direct escalation, which would then be seen as a provocative enough action to allow Israel and the United States to strike Iranian territory, I think that's perhaps a bit more of an elusive possibility.
Yeah, absolutely. It's still a very tense situation. Thank you so much for your perspective, Saeed Khan.
Thank you.